Okay, thank you and welcome and joining us for our revival presentation that's being uploaded to our YouTube channel. My name is Mike Parker. I held the revival with Pastor Ken Billsborough at Good News Bible Church in Coldwater, Michigan, and this is the video production of that revival. And so this was our first night. And what we're doing is just re-recording what was presented to the church at the revival and putting it on our YouTube channel so you folks also could see part of what it was that we presented to the church. This will be a little bit different here. I'll be moving in and out on my computer system and launching different videos. At first I had the videos imported into the presentation in PowerPoint. Unfortunately, because of the lagging and the power supply that is required as far as the RAM is concerned, I didn't have enough that would allow me to do so. So I'll be moving back and forth in the videos that were shown in the presentation. So you'll be able to see. I downloaded those here on my computer so I could present them here in the recording so that you can see them yourself. Now, let's get started here in reference to the Third Jewish Temple in Bible prophecy. Once again, I want you to visit our ministry websites, if you would please, Prophecies of the End Times Radio Ministry, which is located at prophecies-of-the-end-times.com, and our network broadcasting website, Fire of the Holy Ghost Broadcasting Network, located at fireoftheholyghost.com, and a brand new website we just recently done for Good News Bible Church in Coldwater, Michigan, called the Good News Bible Church .org. You can visit that one also, and other ministry websites that were linked to in our ministry through Fire of the Holy Ghost is found at fireoftheholyghost.com also. Here's a brief history of the Jewish temple. The first temple was King Solomon, and it stood for almost 410 years with 18 high priests. The second temple was King David, and it stood for 420 years with 300 high priests. And why did things get so bad? In other words, what happened? Why were these temples destroyed? Other than the fact that they were prophesied that it would be, but why were they destroyed? What happened? Of course, Jesus spoke of the second temple being destroyed in 70 A.D. and had prophesied that. First temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed. But theologically speaking, we know that the reason why the temples were destroyed was the fact that it was largely due because of prophecy disappearing from the land, and a strong central authority was largely lacking. In other words, there were not men of God who were prophesying like they were in the days of old, during the Old Testament time, in the New Testament when it was created. So the prophecy disappeared because the Jewish people had damaged their relationship with God. The temple, the first and second temples, were desecrated by what was going on in them. Of course, Jesus cleansed the temple twice, and we see that temple being referred to really structurally, where God dwells, where we go and worship God, today is considered, by all means, inside of us, the temple inside of our bodies. Our body being considered the temple of God, but also the churches that we attend. And this is why we see, as Pastor Ken Billsborough did speak of this morning, as the recording of this presentation to be uploaded to YouTube spoke of this morning, why God is leaving churches. God is leaving the churches because of what's taking place inside the church, the desecration of that temple. There is a point where God says enough is enough. And I believe we've reached that point, the indignation, the abominations that are taking place. So, prophecy disappeared because the Jewish people had damaged their relationship with God. They were spiritually weaker and could not do the same intense spiritual work required to achieve the prophecy that was coming about, being spoken of through the prophets. And, of course, back in this particular time, and I believe it probably is established again also for today, to be a prophet, you have to perfect yourself spiritually. You have to have your total self-control. It's, according to the Jewish expression, it's the ultimate expression of who being a great man is. So, following the destruction of the first temple, when it became apparent that the Jewish people were growing weaker spiritually, a group of wise leaders, they called themselves wise leaders, came together and expanding the Sanhedrin, which was the Jewish Supreme Court, from 70 members to 120 members, with a special aim to preserving and strengthening Judaism in the diaspora and afterwards. They were the men of the Great Assembly. And as you'll see in this presentation, this has happened again. That Great Assembly was dispersed. They fell apart at the time of Christ's crucifixion and his resurrection. And for many years, well over almost 1900 years, the Sanhedrin had been dispersed, gone. They were cut when the veil was cut. So, cut off, shall I say, when the veil was cut. So, we can continue on here. The original center for Jewish ritual and worship was the temple in Jerusalem. The temple was first built by King Solomon to house the Ark of the Covenant. It was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, but rebuilt on a smaller scale, more lavishly by Herod in the 1st century. 70 AD, Herod's temple was destroyed by the Romans and has yet to be rebuilt. The whereabouts of the Ark of the Covenant, which disappeared after the destruction of the first temple, is one of history's greatest mysteries. Now, we'll be showing you a picture of the Ark of the Covenant here in just a few minutes. And in order for an exact replica to be rebuilt, you'd have to know what the first original Ark of the Covenant looks like. So I'm going to allude to that a little bit later on in reference to what I mean to that. The Western Wall is all that remains of Herod's temple today, and it is not actually a part of the temple itself. It is the western retaining wall built around the temple area, and nevertheless it is the holiest site in Judaism and an important place for pilgrimage, gathering, and prayer. The Western Wall, or the Kotel in Hebrew, is better known as the Wailing Wall for the lamentation of the temple's destruction that occurs there. A recent history of the wall and a live picture can be found at www.westernwall.co.il. Temple Mount covers 35 acres, the most disputed 35 acres on the face of the planet, and can be accessed by non-Muslims through a gate next to the Western Wall. Signs at the entrance list strict rules for visiting the site, including modest dress and no religious activity. Another sign posted by Chief Rabbinate of Israel warns this, and I quote, "According to the Torah, it is forbidden for any person to enter the area of the Temple Mount due to its sacredness. Devout Jews do not visit the Temple Mount in case they might break divine law by walking over the Holy of Holies or the area reserved for priests. The location of the temple has not been identified with certainty. Of course, many scholars throughout the years believe it stood on the present site of the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but others have proposed locations at the north or south end of the platform." So, there is the possibility that the temple could be rebuilt at a different location, and theologians and Orthodox Jews have been looking into that now, even more so recently, as time has prevailed to push the rebuilding of the Third Jewish Temple. So we know that the Third Jewish Temple will be a temple of international faith and worship. That's what they've been indicating that it would be. All faiths would be able to come and worship there. Its construction has been associated with the revealing of the Antichrist. We know that once it stands, then it's just a matter of time and very short period that the Antichrist would be revealed of who he is. Or the possibility exists also that the Antichrist could be revealed and then the temple suddenly and quickly be set up and built on the Temple Mount. Because we'll show you here, thirdly, that recent developments indicate that a replica of the temple has already been built. We have video that you'll see indicating that. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has been preparing for the temple since 2008. All the original artifacts and instruments used in the second and first temples have been recreated, and then the garments for the Leviticus priests have been sewn and are being used during temple training. These are just highlights of what we're going to show you here in just a couple of minutes. So, after almost 2,000 years, the Sanhedrin Rabbi Organization has reestablished and is now an active part of the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Up in the left-hand corner, the photograph showing the scene from the Passion of the Christ, where the lead Sanhedrin rabbi was asking Jesus if he was the Messiah. And then we see pictures of on the Temple Mount where the Sanhedrin had reconvened in that second picture. Thirdly, a kosher red heifer was born in Jerusalem in 2010. We're going to see a video here momentarily on that, and is held in a secret hiding place to protect it from harm. That red heifer now would be about 3 years old. All the artifacts of the original first and second temples have been recreated and are ready for use, with exception to the Ark of the Covenant. And here is Rabbi Gulick showing the, if you see in the picture, the priest, the garments that the priests would wear, and also the crowns that are set forth that go around the forehead of the high priest who would enter the temple. All that is solid gold that you're looking at. So, the upper left-hand corner, announced by Rabbi Richman of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem on March of 2010, a guy by the name of Jesse Woodrow heard the announcement on Temple Institute radio concerning the kosher red heifer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit from our presentation momentarily, show the video in media player because it seems to have a better performance rather than showing it here inside of PowerPoint, but you'll still be able to see the video. So hang on just for a second while I do that, and we will minimize out of this and launch the media player, and you'll be able to see and hear the video.
Israel, dude! If you didn't get the e-newsletter, you're gonna be in. You're in for a treat today. Now, listen, there is big news out of Israel, and I listen to this show every Monday. I listen to this show called Temple Talk, and there is big news that Israel, the Temple Institute, where I have been, right there in Jerusalem. They are in charge of the third temple. They're in charge of building the third temple. The Temple Institute has bombshell breaking news. Now, rather than me telling you what it is, I want to just play for you the clip of Rabbi Chaim Richman with the groundbreaking, huge bombshell news, as he says it is. Here is breaking news from the Temple Institute that we all need to know about. Chaim Richman from the Temple Institute.
Holy Temple, and none of that is the bombshell. The bombshell I wanted to mention is the fact that because everyone is very interested in the status of the red heifer, people speculate, people remember the excitement of when a red heifer was born, people talk about it, and the reason for that, of course, why there's such excitement every time anybody mentions a red heifer is because a lot of people know that there is a Jewish tradition, it's in the Mishnah, that there were only 9 red heifers throughout the entire history of the Jewish people.
We're going to talk about what the Mishnah means. I'm going to talk about this. I just want you guys to hear this bombshell evidence.
And there were 9 red heifers and the ashes from those red heifers were enough to accomplish the process of cleansing for all the generations of the people of Israel. And there is a tradition that the 10th red heifer is the one that's associated with the rebuilding of the third temple. That's why when there's a news report about a red heifer being born, people get very, very excited. It's looked upon as some sort of wake-up call. Or something.
Now remember, this guy right here that we're talking about, this guy that's speaking right now, is in charge of building the third temple. Now, you and I know the third temple is not going to house the actual Messiah. It's going to house the Antichrist. So this Messiah that he's talking about is not our Messiah. It's not Jesus Christ. It's the Antichrist.
Like that. Now, I wanted to share with our listeners far and wide the fact that there is definitely a kosher red heifer here in Israel.
Whoa! Kosher red heifer! There is one! There is a kosher red heifer! Now we're going to talk about what this means. What is a kosher red heifer? What meets the requirements? Why does it matter to you and I?
This is really breaking news.
Yes, it is.
This should be on a scroll on the bottom of a CNN or something.
It should be.
And it's a scroll on the Jesse Woodrow show for sure. That's right.
It really should be.
It should be. We're not making a lot of noise about it. We're not taking out all sorts of ads, and we're not certainly not disclosing the location. That's definitely not prudent, and I'm not going to be sharing it with the United States Embassy. Absolutely not. But you should know that there are definitely In fact, I think there's more than one, but there is definitely at least
more than one. Now, what does this mean for you and I? If there's more than one, let's say this one develops a red, some kind of a white spot on it, or it develops some kind of blemish where it's not actually going to be able to be used and does not have the requirements of Jewish law. He said there seems to be another one, which, I mean, he's indicating not just one, but maybe more than one.
One kosher red heifer here in Israel right now, so that is not what is impeding the process at all.
Okay, now when he says that, that's not what's in.
Now here, this is where I'll go ahead and stop the video, and we'll show the next one here momentarily. But this is where this really gets very interesting, folks, because the information that was announced by Jesse Woodrow is no longer available on YouTube. In fact, the gentleman you're looking at in our presentation can't even be found. He had video that was on YouTube for a while where he was following these things. He was following the Catholic Church and following the different things that were taking place in prophecy. And then all of a sudden, his YouTube channel was taken off, and everything that he had discovered, everything he'd made announcements from, was completely removed from his channel. And a lot of people who were following that YouTube channel want to know where Jesse Woodrow went. And more than likely, I venture to say that there's very few people out there that have a copy of this video that was from YouTube when he made the announcement. And there might be something, it might have something to do with the fact that you heard Rabbi Richman say that he did not want to disclose the information to the United States Embassy. Now, in 2010, who was president? And who still is? Barack Obama. And so he's got several Temple Institute videos on YouTube that Rabbi Richman is not very pleased with Barack Obama in reference to the things that he's been doing and has done. And so the availability of all that is unreal. Now the next video I want to show you, and in reference to the what was going on. First, the red heifer. Let's talk about that, and very briefly before I get to this next video. The red heifer, where Jesse had discovered that it was in Israel, a kosher red heifer. What does that mean? Well, it's huge in the implication of the tradition of the red heifer, and it's huge really in biblical prophecy, because there had not been a red heifer. There's not been a red heifer, a purebred red heifer, one that could be used for a sacrifice in the new temple. There's not been one in Israel until 2010. From the last time, the last one, the ninth one, was sacrificed. We're talking literally almost 2,000 years. So this is very significant. And these signs taking place, this taking place in Israel, is a sign that that heifer would be used by, perhaps be used by the coming Antichrist, who would sit in the temple and would be revealed during a time of what is called Daniel's 70th week. We know that when we read about Daniel's 70th week, that the Antichrist comes and then he stops the animal sacrifices. Well, in other words, he's revealed at a time when these animal sacrifices were taking place. And so the animal sacrifices have to be taking place ahead of time, at the time of the revealing of the Antichrist. And so this kosher red heifer being born, now being in secrecy, the possibility of not more than one, maybe two, as a backup. If this kosher red heifer was born in 2010, March of 2013 makes it about 3 years old, and right now, as of the recording of this video, October 27th of 2013, makes that red heifer about 3 3/4 years old. So it's right at the time frame of when the age of these animals that are sacrificed, which means it could be very close to the revealing of the Antichrist. The next video that I want to show you is in the video player again also, the late J.R. Church and Prophecy of the News. So let's go there real quick, and I'll show you this video in reference to Prophecy in the News. And this was J.R. Church making the announcement that the Sanhedrin had reestablish their covenant with God. And this is another event that has taken place that is incredibly prophetic in this video. So here we go. And this is it.
I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. Got a bit of news out of Israel. Don writes, one of our supporters, he writes this: for many years now, the religious Jews have been making preparations to reestablish their ancient covenant relationship with God. He says, under the leadership of the new Sanhedrin and the rabbis, every detail of the ancient Levitical priesthood has been examined and preparations been made to restore the priesthood. He says, a few months ago in 2009, the Sanhedrin and the Jewish rabbinate commissioned the building of a sacred altar for offering up to God of animal sacrifices. He says, this altar is now finished and has been consecrated. As I write, he says, I have a news release on my desk right before my eyes, which I received yesterday, sent directly from korbanpesach.org.
Listen carefully.
That's KORBANPESACH.org. He said, this is a committee of the Sanhedrin Initiative in Jerusalem. I'm emphasizing this to impress that the info contained in this news release is not an idle rumor or one man's suggestion or opinion. This information is for real and came straight from the Sanhedrin court in Jerusalem. Are you ready for this? The news release states that on Passover of this year, April 6th, the religious Jews will seek to reestablish their ancient covenant relationship with God by offering the lambs required by the law of God as Passover sacrifices on the rebuilt altar. How about that? So the Jews, after nearly 2,000 years of not offering sacrifices, even the Passover sacrifices, on every Passover table there has been this shank bone, this old dry shank bone. Not a morsel of meat, no. Not on the Passover table, no meat. For all these centuries. And this year, wow, what a year, 2010. This year, the Jews will begin offering animal sacrifices. They're inviting people to send, that is, Jewish families, to send money to buy a lamb so that they could get at least one little portion of the meat.
Now, I remember in listening to this, and I'm going to go back to it in just a minute, but what really caught my attention was, number one, that he had said that the lamb was sacrificed on the sacrificial altar. Now, that's another prophetic thing. We have another video we're going to show you. Another prophetic thing that has taken place where the sacrifices are happening. It's a portable altar that was built, and that portable altar will fit right into the temple itself when the temple is constructed.
They have to be there, of course, in order to participate. I don't know what kind of crowd they expect, but the Passover sacrifice will be carried out on the rebuilt altar. And I want to just pick up this korbanpesach.org. It says, what has changed that enables us to offer the Korban Pesach now?
This is
Recently,
huge.
This comes from a Jewish website. The Jewish people have begun to reassert their rights to the Temple Mount. They have been aided by the technical progress and archaeological discoveries in solving the once insurmountable problem of determining the areas that can be visited by Jews in a state of impurity, which areas remain off limits. Modern technology, such as laser cutting tools, can solve the problem of constructing an altar without metallic tools. So, no metallic tools used, but laser cutters. That's what it says. Mm-hmm. They're going to use modern technology. They want to fancy it up, make it look nice. However, the most important developments this year in Jerusalem, the Sanhedrin Initiative is calling upon the Jewish people in Israel and throughout the world to participate in the Korban Pesach. The Sanhedrin Initiative will choose sheep to be offered in the Korban Pesach, and all preparations will be made in the expectation that we can renew this ancient traditional offering. In the event that political and other obstacles intervene, the Sanhedrin Initiative has taken halakhic precautions to ensure that the money used for purchasing sheep can still be used for charitable donations and so on. This is, I think, a very important development in Israel. as this year, for the first time in over 1,800 years, the Jewish people will be slaughtering Passover lambs.
That's incredible, folks, for that to have happened. Now, remember, this was in 2010 when this took place. Here we are, 2013, and this has secretly been taking place all this time, and unbeknownst really to Christians and unbeknownst to many people who go to church, this has been taking place all this time. So the animal sacrifices have already begun, something that a lot of, in this level, something a lot of theologians had predicted and or had preached that would take place during the tribulation period. Well, it has to begin prior to the tribulation period, and that's what's happened here. It's not happening on a daily thing. It's happening on holy feast days, and of course, it's still not happening on the Temple Mount. That will be the ultimate phase of fulfillment of prophecy. But this is huge, and this brings us one step closer. Actually, a huge step closer to what's taking place. Now, here's a picture of the Sanhedrin and other Jewish leaders begin the construction of the portable altar according to the Torah, first 5 books of the Old Testament, to sacrifice the lambs and goats used during the rituals that will be used in the Third Temple. This altar was constructed and finished in 2010. So it's happened sometime in January when it was built, and then on Passover in April, it was in 2010 when they sacrificed the first one on there. The video, I'm not going to show you that one because all it is this is a picture of it. The video does show that they were preparing some type of a mixture of tar in that barrel, and then they would take a picture right down here in this area right here. They would take a bucket and fill it up, and they would walk over to the temple where the frame had been made, and they would start filling that stuff up to put the rocks were in place, and it would just shows the construction of this temple. The construction of the altar for the temple. The next video here is the training school and replica of the third Jewish temple is constructed in Mitzpe, Jericho. The Leviticus priests begin their ritual training. This is proof that a one-to-one replica of the third temple was constructed. Let me see if I can find that video real quick on our media player again. And we'll play that for you momentarily here. Give me just a second. Modern technology, being able to look at right on my computer and pull the videos up that I have on the computer. So, I'm sure it was in here somewhere. And it's not. And this one here, I think I had it in. Well, there it is right there. That's the temple. Construction of the temple. Or the construction of the
here we see
of the altar.
people who are building the altar. They've made a fire, and they have a burning barrel here, and they're about to pour together the ingredients that combine to the material that glues together the stones of the altar.
Okay, let's see if we can't find the other one also real quick here. And while I'm looking for this, I thought it was on here. I had it all organized, and I apparently didn't organize that one. Didn't put it there. So I'll have to find it at a later time and publish it to the website so back to the presentation. I could play it in here. It would probably cause the program to crash, and I don't want to do that. So let's go from the current slide, and I'll post the video to the YouTube channel so you folks can watch it. Some of the artifacts prepared for the Third Jewish Temple include the golden menorah, the table of showbread, and the Ark of the Covenant. Here's a picture of all three. The Ark of the Covenant to the right, and then the showbread to the center, and then the golden menorah, valued at today's market prices in gold of about $9.5 million. A lot of folks ask, when will the temple be rebuilt and how will this happen and what players are involved? You see everything that is construed here, what's being involved. Obama, Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, Ahmadinejad, who's no longer the prime minister of Iran, Obama putting together the peace treaty that's supposed to be signed by Passover with John Kerry of 2014, and China even stepping in and being involved. When will it be rebuilt? And you got a gentleman up here, Albert Pike. He prophesied or made a statement that the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenda of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. And we just found out at the recording of this video on October 27th, 2013, today, that intelligence is informing Benjamin Netanyahu that Ahmadinejad or Iran is very close within the next couple of weeks of having a nuclear bomb developed. And Obama's intelligence reports are saying that that's prior to the intelligence reports received in Israel. Obama had been telling Netanyahu that his resources told him that it would be another year. I don't see Israel holding off any longer, especially after the debacle with the United States government and the shutdown and everything that was taking place. I don't see that happening. So I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can see all of it. Here we got the Dome of the Rock, which is pictured right here. And then we have the below is the Islamic temple, is the rock. Below the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, is the rock that Abraham was asked to sacrifice Isaac on. This is the exact area that has been believed and taught that the Third Jewish Temple is supposed to be built on according to Jewish tradition and Jewish law. Over here, in this section of your screen and the video, this is the proposed area that the Sanhedrin say the temple can be built on. And there is a Muslim shrine that's been set on that area. This is believed by some archaeologists to be a holy site because Muslims built a shrine over the top of it. So this is another possibility. This is what they've been discussing. Archaeologists have been sent up to the Temple Mount. Were hired around the area to do some discovering and to do some measuring, and there's a possibility that they have found an area where they could build the Temple Mount, or the temple on the mount where that shrine has been located. So we see right now, as we've been discussing this, we can see right now that the battle over the Temple Mount is going to begin. It's going to be a battle between Judaism, Islam, Christianity. All three faiths from all over the world, of course, would be allowed to come to worship in this temple. But who's going to have control over the Temple Mount? Who is going to administer the Temple Mount? Who's going to be in charge of making sure that all faiths have their privileged right to go up on the Temple Mount and worship? How will it come about? Will it come about with Islam allowing Jews, with a peace treaty, to put the the third temple, right next to the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Will there be peace with that? Or some type of deal that would deceive Israel in allowing them to do so? So who is allowed on the Temple Mount? To the left, you see the Pope, Pope Benedict. He was allowed on the Temple Mount. Why would a Christian leader of a Christian religion be allowed right on the Temple Mount, that close to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, with Muslim leaders following with him and his entourage? Interesting, isn't it? Muslims, of course, are allowed on the Temple Mount. Here is during Ramadan, the Muslims going and gathering into the shrine for worship. But why are Jews at times banned at the Temple Mount? In most cases, Israel bans Jews from the Temple Mount themselves because they don't want to incite a riot of the Muslim world. But in most cases, Jews are banned from the Temple Mount, period. And this is what has got them so upset. So we can see that we have information that was given to us. This was a leaked WikiLeaks document to an Israel newspaper that we found, the Daily Haaretz in Israel. And this is the article that was wrote in that newspaper. It said this: "The battle is not for justice and democracy. The battle is for the control of Mount Zion, the very site of the two Jewish temples in Jerusalem. The man who soon will sit there will be worshipped as God. The Father Jesus addressed as the Holy Father, but the man on the Temple Mount will be a fake and a very powerful deceiver. Millions will worship this man of lawlessness." This is what the Israeli Daily Haaretz write on the latest catch of secret documents, a leaked WikiLeaks document that was revealed to them. The documents also reveal that the Palestinian negotiators, in an effort to move forward on the hypersensitive issue of the holy sites in the old city of Jerusalem, proposed a joint committee to administer the Temple Mount, and said that the offers were made in 2008 in the wake of the Annapolis Conference and were privately hailed by chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat as giving Israel the biggest Yerushalayim, or in the Hebrew name for Jerusalem, in history. The Palestinian Authority in Ramallah is on the payroll of the United States and the papacy. And most of you who follow prophecy have already known that, but if you're watching this for the first time and you do not follow Bible prophecy, that may come a shock to you that the Palestinian Authority, the PA, is on the payroll. The United States funnels money to them. They are not interested in grabbing land in East Jerusalem for any other purpose than bringing the head of the one world religion back to his former throne in East Jerusalem. Who would that be? The Bishop of Rome ruled in Jerusalem from 1090 AD to 1291 AD. So a representative, a bishop, a representative of the Vatican, ruled in Jerusalem from that time frame. And of course it wasn't just one, there were several. Palestinian negotiators secretly agreed to concede almost all Jewish areas of East Jerusalem to Israel. The Guardian newspaper and Al Jazeera TV reported on Saturday at the time of this was writing, so we're talking, it's been several months ago, as many as 1,600 Palestinian documents on peace talks with Israel obtained by Al Jazeera TV and given to The Guardian, covering more than a decade of exchanges, provide a unique look into the breakdown of the peace process. The biggest leak of confidential documents in the history of the conflict has revealed that Palestinian negotiators secretly agreed to accept Israel's annexation of all but one of the neighborhoods, Har Homa, built in East Jerusalem. Now, that was from the Israeli Daily Haaretz newspaper that leaked that. The WikiLeaks document was leaked to them, and they published it. I'm just basically rereading what they had published, bombshell information. So really, in reality, this is true. This WikiLeaks document is true. And if you've been watching the news, Snowden and Assange and all the rest of them who have been leaking information to the world, Israel has been negotiating with the papacy regarding the Temple Mount, and so has the Islamic leaders of Jordan. I mean, folks, that changes everything if that's the case. Number two, an historic agreement has been drafted between Israel and the Vatican. The Israeli authorities have granted the Pope an official seat in the room where the Last Supper is believed to have taken place on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and where David and Solomon, Jewish kings of Judea, are considered by some researchers to also be buried. That would be considered a holy temple, and it also could be desecrated. An abomination could take place if a harlot church would have control of that. It is the culmination of a long campaign by the Catholic Church to regain religious stewardship over the place where Jesus is supposed to have broken bread and drunk wine with his disciples on the eve of his crucifixion. So this is an enormous issue, pushed through without any public debate and without virtually, more than likely, I would venture to say 95% of all Christians in the United States or even around the world. According to our sources, the agreement, which is expected to be ratified next June, and this, of course, being reprinted, being talked about here in this video, that was June of this year, 2013, gives the Pope a special authority over the second floor of the building so that Christian pilgrims will be able to celebrate religious functions like Pope John Paul did in 2000. The agreement constitutes Israel's capitation to the Vatican's efforts to Christianize the holy site, like when a Catholic covenant was built in Auschwitz. And so as of June 2013, from what we know, all agreements had been signed except for the parking lot adjacent to the Church of the Last Supper, a temple considered to be a holy place. The parking lot, there was some kind of disagreement to the adjacent part of the temple, the church itself, and how much room would be taken up. There were some other retail establishments and some other tourism places that get quite a bit of tourism, and they didn't know whether or not the parking lot could be shared with, or if they would allow it to be shared. The bottom line is, what I'm reading here, if you're following this, is that the Vatican has made an agreement with Israel to have Mass in this church. And this church is really considered to be a very holy site, as where some researchers also say that David and Solomon were both buried there, and where the Last Supper took place with Christ and the disciples. It's a very holy site in Christendom. And so this is where this gets a little bit deeper and a little bit more interesting. Here, a former Israeli prime minister does not think Israel is capable of securing the freedom of religion in Jerusalem. He was speaking in Tel Aviv to a group called the Geneva Initiative. Olmert also said that he was prepared as then prime minister to share Jerusalem's holy sites with the Palestinians. He said these sites, which include the Western Wall and the Temple Mount, he says it will not be ours nor the Palestinians once this takes place. He says it will be managed by an international trustee which includes other countries, Olmert said, describing his vision for the area known as the Holy Basin. Israel is one of them. The Palestinians are there, the Saudi Arabians are there, according to my offer, the Jordanians and the Americans. So this is a trust fund of 5 countries. This trust is going to ensure the freedom of access to all the holy sites to any Jew, to any Muslim, to any Christian, he said. And this source was CNN. Who will have that trust? Now, picture this. As you're watching this video, and this is going to be a prediction that I'm going to make. Now, this is my gut feeling. The peace process that's going to take place and that's impending, that more than likely will be signed by Passover of 2014, will include what this guy just said in this article and when he was interviewed on CNN. It's going to include what Olmert is talking about. The peace process is going to include this trust that will give the Jews the right to rebuild their temple on the Temple Mount. And the United States, along with Saudi Arabia and the Palestinians and Jordanians and the Catholic Church, that's right, the Catholic Church will have control over the Temple Mount. That's my prediction. That's what I believe is going to be part of the head of this. Now, we got Benedict still alive, and of course he's staying at the Vatican. Now, Benedict could stay at the Vatican and be an operator. He could be filling in for Pope Francis when Pope Francis leaves to go to Jerusalem to set up for Mass. Kind of the possibility might be there. I'm not really sure. Kind of throwing it out there to see what you all might think. But let's read further into this. Catholic Church has long awaited control over part of the area on Mount Zion as to turn it into an international religious center for Catholics, Christians. The blueprint of the agreement reads as follows. The Vatican hands over this use of the cenacle to the custody of the Holy Land, which will keep the cenacle open from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for the celebration of Holy Mass. In the long term, the gesture will increase tensions between Jews and the large assets of the Vatican. The Church has long been working to reduce Jewish rights in Jerusalem and in the Old City. Now, after the Muslim Waqf Authority expelled the Christians from the Temple Mount and turned it into a mosque, it's the turn of the Vatican to lay its hands on the Jewish Jerusalem. The custody of the Holy Land, the Franciscan order, who, with Vatican approval, is in charge of the holy sites, campaigns with the Arabs against Israel. As far back as May 2000, Yasser Arafat met Islamic and Christian clergymen at the presidential offices in Ramallah to back Palestinian Arab sovereignty over Jerusalem. Among the clergymen who attended the meeting, Diodorus I, Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church, Torquem II, Patriarch of the Armenian Orthodox Church, and Catholic Patriarch Michael Sabah, and officials from the custody of the Holy Land. Now, I'm not making this up. This has actually happened. So, there was a video on the final pope. We're going to skip that real quick. An official meeting took place in Ramallah, Palestine, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Palestine. Okay? Let me reposition this real quick so we get all this in here. There we go. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Palestine. This is the official note of the Vatican Press Office about the meeting between the Catholic officials and the PLO representatives, which took place the week of June 2013. The Vatican is also asking that Israel hand over the Vatican's control of dozens of sites, 19 in Judea and Samaria, and 28 in Jerusalem. Catholic Church wants to discuss some properties on the Mount of Olives, Herr Zitzman, which is the very history of the Jewish people. And if you want to keep Jerusalem united, you have to keep Herr Zitzman. The Vatican knows that. So that would become part of their dispersal of authority. In 1989, charges were made by the Catholic authorities that Israel desecrated the cenacle on Mount Zion. The charges, which appeared in the Italian bishop's newspaper Avenir, said that the Israelis put a memorial plaque on the roof of the cenacle. Plaque was put in place after the 1948 War of Independence in memory of soldiers who fell in the Old City and whose burial place was unknown. Every year, the bereaved families cleaned the plaque. And why did the Catholic authorities complain? Well, last year in 2012, a similar charge was made from the Catholic authorities that Israel wants to Judaize Mount Zion. So, should the Vatican gain sovereignty over Mount of Zion, millions of Christian pilgrims will flock to the site, and this will threaten Israeli presence in the Old City's Jewish quarter and Jewish access to the Western Wall. The Vatican wants the Jews out of the Old City, and apparently Israel's government is agreeing with them by granting them the presence at the cenacle. Turning the cenacle into an active church is also a way of desecrating the holiness of the site known as the Tomb of David. So, when you see the abomination of desecration standing in the holy place, remember in the book of Daniel? The Vatican and the Palestinian Liberation Organization expressed a common position in the basic agreement of the 15th of February 2000, which was intended to support the recognition of a special statute for the city of Jerusalem. In the memorandum signed by Vatican officials and the PLO, an organization dedicated to the mass deportation of Israel's Jews, Catholic Church wants Israel relinquishing sovereignty at the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. Bang, bingo, holy mackerel. The Vatican PLO Agreement's preamble on Jerusalem shows that the Vatican's attitude on Israel's capital is still stuck in this unforgivable anti-Semitic rhetoric of the 1940s. Until 1948, let me move this back up a little bit. Seems to be that my access to the screen here is a little off. And until 1948, Christian access to the cenacle was severely limited because it was used as a mosque. Since then, the State of Israel is committed to protecting the holy places of all religions and guaranteeing the right of worship for all faiths. But no Israeli government must tolerate any policy of division, shared control, or internationalization that opens the door to a return to the Arab apartheid of Jordanian occupation between 48 and 67. Jerusalem is not for sale, and for thousands of years the cenacle area was almost always totally closed off to Jews. Sovereignty over Mount Zion is politics, not only religion. The day after the Pope celebrated a Mass on Mount Zion in the year 2000, he went to Yasser Arafat, headquartered to support the Palestinians' right to return. A few months later, the Oslo War began, and Jews were sacrificed again on the altar of peace. It was their last supper. This week of June 2013, the Vatican and its official documents began referring to the state of Palestine. As America has done to Israel, is America on a collision course with God? Of course, McTarren's website, As America Has Done to Israel. Excellent information there also in reference to that, where you can go and visit that. So, is it time to rebuild? Another video that was there that'll be posted on YouTube, and I can't show you here because of the lack of the amount of time we got left. But it will be posted on the YouTube channel in the same area of these videos. You will have a playlist that you'll be able to click on and see this video and the videos that are going to be referring to that particular presentation. So let's summarize the events surrounding the Third Temple and Bible prophecy. There's 10 of them. Number 1, there will be a third Jewish temple built. Our generation, after 2,000 years, has seen the quickest advancement in all other generations for the construction of the temple. Number 2, all artifacts, utensils, priestly garments, instruments, and ritual artifacts have been created and are ready to use in the temple. Number 3, the birth of a kosher red heifer in Jerusalem in 2010. Perhaps 2 of them has been reported and is confirmed in hiding. Number 4, the Sanhedrin rabbis, a group of 71 rabbis, have declared that God has reestablished his covenant with Israel after nearly 1900 years. This is the same group of leaders. Now, remember, during the Lord Jesus' ministry, looking for their Messiah, they're also the same group of leaders that had him crucified. Number 5, in the book of Hosea, God confirms that the house of Israel in the latter days will be redeemed, and his covenant with them will be revealed through the return of Christ. Number 6, 100 Leviticus priests chosen by DNA testing have been training in the school outside of Jerusalem, Meretz Jericho, where it has been confirmed an exact replica of a third temple is located, including libation pools, animal sacrifices, the sacrificial altar, and more. You'll see some of that in the video that I'll have posted on the YouTube channel, or the channel that you're on now. The Catholic Church is now in control of numerous holy sites and is battling for control of the Temple Mount. May be that this number 8, a peace treaty declared by the United States, Israel, and the Palestinians, is rumored to have already been formulated and is awaiting the crisis in Syria and its outcome by a 9-month process that John Kerry had committed to, which puts us right around Passover 2014. Here's another interesting development. Number 9, major earthquake fault from the outskirts of the Mediterranean Sea, running right through Jerusalem, right through the center of the Temple Mount, and also through Damascus, could destroy the mosque. This fault has been dormant for 500 years until a recent earthquake of 5.2 magnitude took place, and that happened in June of this year. As a matter of fact, I gave a broadcast about this earthquake fault and how some of the folks believe that's how Damascus will be destroyed, was by an earthquake and not by war. The following day, after that broadcast on our Spreaker account, there was a 5.2 earthquake in the Mediterranean, and it shook, was felt as far as Damascus. The Temple Institute hired archaeologists to locate a place where the temple could be built on the Temple Mount, and found one. According to our sources, that's what they're considering, is building the temple there on the where that shrine was built earlier in our presentation that I had showed you. So there are the summaries, 10 summaries of this presentation that, and with video, that basically have, in my opinion, very convincing evidence that a third temple is going to be rebuilt, and more than likely will be rebuilt very soon. It will be built, I believe it will be rebuilt in our generation, and perhaps within the next year to a year and a half, if this peace treaty is formulated and is it's signed by Passover of 2014. The next presentation that we give is on the coming worldwide financial collapse, and I'll be showing it on the next video that we do, and that's going to end this video in this presentation at this time, and then we will upload this one and do the next one, and you'll be able to watch that one too. So, first night of our revival, the Third Jewish Temple. The second night of our revival was the